Oh, my name is Eric, and I'm going to talk about Typehead.js, a flexible JavaScript library that provides a strong foundation for building robust typeheads. And it was created by the Twitter team, the same team that created Bootstrap. About Typehead. Typehead is a jQuery plugin that can be used directly with Twitter Bootstrap or as an individual plugin. The cool thing about Typehead is that it's similar to what you already use on a daily basis, and that's autocorrect. It's basically autocorrect for searches and queries, which is very useful, or it can be bothersome. Let's get started with our HTML. It's pretty basic. So when you got a basic HTML page, the only thing that you're going to need to do is create a div wrapper. You will need to identify it. I use local DB. You don't need the class container. Only have that if you're using Bootstrap. And all I did was center the information here. Now, when we get into the input, I did use a class. I did use form control. You do want to actually use a class here. You don't have to, but it's better to have it sorted out. And if you're going to use multiple type heads, and my theme here was planets. To begin, you'll need to set up a div wrapper for the individual searches. Every time you want to use Typehead, you must either create a new div with a new ID or a new class. Otherwise, every time you enter in the input field, it will all come up the same. For the input portion of the HTML, you'll need to create a class. Keep it simple, but you can keep your classes the same, as that does not have to change, only the ID for the div wrapper. I'm using form control as I'm using Bootstrap. You do not need to use a class in the div container if you do not want to. The center tag is not needed. I only wanted to center for the presentation. Let's get started with the JavaScript here. Now, let me load this here. Alright, so basically with the JavaScript, what I'm doing here, I created a search and return function which looks through the data, which looks through our array here, planets. Um, so pretty much all this will do is actually just search for any string or letter that is in our local database here. So if I type M, it will bring up Mercury. It will also bring up Mars. If I type Venus, it'll bring up Venus, obviously. If I type just V, it'll also bring up anything that has the letter V. So that's one thing I really like about Typehead. It makes things easy to search for, and if you actually know what you're searching for, it will find it for you. So let's actually get into the actual thing about Typehead. When I was showing you the HTML, I did use local database, and then in my input field, I use form control. That is what I'm notifying in the JavaScript field here. And as for the actual typehead itself, now you don't need highlight. All that variable is if you want to highlight your searches. And you don't need name or display key. You don't need them at all. I just like using them for organization reasons, but you do need source. As you see, so at the beginning I did use solar matches, which is basically our search function here, and our variable planets, which will basically use our source and go through anything in that array. If it has an A, it'll bring up anything that brings up an A, same with an M, Z, T, any, or even letters itself, or words, which I find really cool. So as I already explained, that I created a search function that goes through the planet's variable. It basically breaks everything down to a string. Um, and that makes it very easy to, if when you're searching for something, if I type Venus, it'll obviously bring up Venus. If I type V, it'll bring up anything that has the letter V, and that's really cool. Like I said earlier, the planets variable is just an array that is holding our solar system planets. I could have created other, subarrays for exoplanets or satellites, but for this presentation and to keep things under 10 minutes, I kept it to a basic array. And also going ahead with the JavaScript. Um, Now you do need to use local DB, which is my
identifier for the planet's type head. I also use form class for my input. That doesn't have to change if I use multiple type heads, as long as the ID identifier does change. Um, and let's continue here. Now, as I said earlier, you don't have to use name or display key. It's just there for organization reasons. And you don't need to use it at all. But if you want to, you can use it. Just make it easy, to find when you have long type heads. It makes it, very easy to find. Alright, so that's pretty much it for the presentation. Now, that was pretty nitty-gritty, but Typehead is a very basic jQuery library. So there really wasn't much to talk about, but let's actually get into the example here. So as I said earlier, let me erase this. So like I said earlier, if I type V, it'll bring up Venus. But what if I put U? It's going to bring everything that has a U. So so I'm starting to get, so basically it breaks everything down to a string and makes, if I type U, it's going to, highlight that U. Anything that has a U, it finds. So what if I type E, for example? Well, Earth is going to be in there. So is Neptune. So is Venus and Mercury. But as you can see here, I also have another typehead. It's pretty much the exact same typehead that I'm using, a local database, but I created a local typehead for our classes, my classmates here. So if I type K, for example, brings up me. If I type C, T, as you can see, you're getting the idea here. That's pretty much my example. Very nitty-gritty, but it gets to the point. It's very simple, very easy to implement into any website. Now, is it now is it actually worth using? That's really up to you. Personally, I find it very useful. As I said earlier, I only covered local databases. I did not cover remote or server side databases. So you can use if you have databases on a server or on a completely different computer, and as long as you know the IP, you actually can link to that database if you want to. But doing so does take more time and effort. So that's pretty much the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a nice day.